This is going to make me sound so cray, but okay. So, long story short, I was hijacked at gunpoint. You know, even the trainers off my feet were taken. I was just broken because I'm like, hold on a minute. You took my trainers, I can deal with that. But now you've took who I am. To get graphic, like, you know, you wake up and a stream of blood pours out of your mouth, and no one told me that that was even going to happen. So there's a lot of shock.
So welcome to the BU podcast. We're here with a good friend of mine, Buki from Dawta Of The Sun. How are you doing today?
Not bad. I'm acclimatizing.
Acclimatizing to what, the British weather, or?
Yeah, and I'm just telling everyone for straight 2 months I've got jet lag. So I'm just...
2 months of jet lag?
Yeah.
Is that 2 months of real jet lag or 2 months of I can't be asked?
Combination.
Perfect. So let's start off with Dawta Of The Sun. So I understand it's a female empowerment and self-love brand. So would you like to tell me a bit more about that?
So Dawta Of The Sun is really a reflection of where I am at in my journey at any given moment. So the dominant outpour of, you know, what happens within me is visible online. So on Instagram, I'm on there. And what I do is workshops, events, which circle, what should I say? They are sister circles. So if you're not sure what a sister circle is, it's bringing together women, creating a safe space where they can go through whatever it is that they need to go through. So the events do have agendas, they have themes. The first one happened in Jamaica. I think it was 2016. And then I've had events in the UK, and I was due to do one in Australia as well recently. So, yeah.
Okay, so you were due. Was there a reason? Oh, you came back here, I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which was a personal challenge. But that's the thing, when you're doing this work, it needs to be reflected in your real life. So I could have, given the circumstances that I was in, I could have just continued with the event. But because I had to take care of myself, so personal self-care had to be on point at that moment, I had to make changes to the external work, you know, what I give to other people.
So you say self-care. What is self-care for you then?
First of all, I want to be very clear and say that self-care is very personal. So what my response is may not fit you, may not fit another person. Self-care at the moment, you know, there's so many different mediums telling us what self-care is, because, you know, there's money behind that as well. People can earn money from putting out these products, etc., which is great. Nothing wrong with making money. But I think when you're looking at your self-care, you need to be very, you know, open to what's going on inside of you. Say, what do I need? Whether that's, you know, generally people look at things like TLC, you know, giving yourself a certain bath, taking yourself somewhere alone. Self-care might be not speaking to certain people that you spoke to before, you know, what food you're putting in your body, whatever it is that feels good to you. One of my favorite poets, she talks about, you know, get it and feel good. So that's definitely, it's something that should be unapologetic, for sure.
Get what exactly?
Whatever it is that, like, for me, do you want some personal examples?
Yeah, what?
Okay, so it might be dancing in my room to my kind of music, as if no one is watching, because then I can feel liberated. I can, you know, move certain energy that needs to be moved. So there's a lot of stuff. I don't even call what I do self-care dates anymore, because it's just so frequent. It's not even a thing for me to go to a restaurant alone, go and watch a film alone, travel the world. Like, it's not a thing, because that's what makes me feel good sometimes, to, you know, do those things, take that time out, you know, get more in tune with yourself, etc.
Sounds good. So it's interesting because I guess we've jumped ahead a little bit, because we're here to discuss self-love, but obviously self-care is a huge part. There's no love without care, right? So, I mean, where would you draw the distinction, or how would you give self-love a broader definition, and what is self-love for you?
Okay, so self-love for me at this moment is being unafraid to take actions that empower yourself, despite the fact that self-love, see, so interchangeable, self-love can often look selfish. Some people even say, where do you draw the line? What's self-love and what's narcissism? I've heard that discussion, and I would say accountability. So if you have to, let's say, make a decision that is beneficial for you, but on a surface level, maybe detrimental to another person, of course, that can look like selfish. It can look like narcissism. But if you know that your intentions are good and they're ultimately going to, add more benefit to you, then in my thinking, that is always going to be beneficial to others that you interact with. So if you are your best at the foundation, your self-love, your self-care is on point, then naturally a beautiful byproduct of that is other people can experience you at your best.
That's cool. So like I've just done a video yesterday actually, which I've literally just uploaded. So maybe you can check that out later. But essentially I've broken self-love into 5 parts, which were essentially acceptance, appreciation. So you need to accept yourself. You need to accepting yourself is one thing, but then appreciation is taking it to that next level. And you need to be able to show yourself compassion.
Yes.
And it's interesting you just said about the whole selfish thing. You need to be able to set boundaries. And people often confuse boundaries as being self-centered. But like you said, if you're not at your best, how can you be of any use to anyone? How can you, even if you've got a very giving heart, sometimes you can give, and you're left empty. So you can't express your giving nature when you're empty. So boundaries. And then so I think what we've been describing as self-care, I've kind of put down as practice. So I to me, self-care is practice, the act of practicing self-love.
Yes.
And so that's just bringing into the routine every day, making sure you're appreciating who you are. That can be through affirmations. And, when you have those moments when things may not go your way or things are going wrong, that you'll take a moment and instead of being so, you're so useless, or, when you get into that negative cycle, you show yourself compassion and self-care. All these aspects come into self-care and practicing self-love. So it's cool what you think about it. I think we're pretty much on the same page in that sense. So what was having a discussion a little bit earlier about, so you mentioned self-love is profitable now for some reason, but so 20 years ago, self-love, it was a hippie thing. It's for the hippies, and now suddenly it's kind of a mainstream commercial kind of thing. So why do you think that change has happened?
I'm not an expert. I can only talk about my path, where I've walked and what I've engaged with, what I've seen. But potentially a lot of that is to do with the very material and aesthetic focused world that we're in at the moment. This social media, this visual exposure. And of course, all these studies will reflect the fact that it's affecting people's self-esteem. Their ability to be authentic is being tampered with because we're having to perform. So when you're in this world of, I have to indicate I've got this, I've got that, I'm not like this, I'm not like that, then you become detached from your true self, continuously pushing away your truth and then choosing something that is not your truth. And that's when self-love, is screaming for you to take a hold of that journey. That's what I would say. It's a balance of those two things, creating this outpour of the need for self-love and self-care.
So social media's kind of put a lens on us that we didn't necessarily have 20 years ago. So everyone is in your life now. Everyone knows everything about your life. And then the opposite side of that is the whole FOMO and you because you're seeing into everyone else's life and forgetting actually all you're seeing is the highlights. So no one's posting the days when they're lying in the bed watching Netflix all day. No one's posting the days, you know, they might be down and they're crying and, you know,
Mm,
no one's
mm,
posting that stuff. So if all you're seeing is parties, drinking, having a good time,
mm,
fancy restaurants,
mhm.
then you're going to be like, hey, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, and I think what's just came to my mind is even filters.
Mm,
They we'll be at a point in the future when a lot of people won't even have pictures of their children without a filter.
mm.
And real life image of your baby isn't even going to be there because it's just going to be, you know, some puppy ears on their face and some flowers. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, like I, I've literally got one image of me on, or might be in a video
Mm-hmm.
on Snapchat with a
Mm-hmm.
filter.
Mm,
And the difference between traditional filters and what you're actually doing, you're just enhancing the colors,
mm,
just make things a bit more saturated or sharper, just so they look pleasing to the eye.
mm-hmm.
But then when Snapchat brought their filters out, so you're talking about the dog and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
actually there's this idea of what beautiful is, right?
Yeah.
Symmetry or whatever.
Mm.
And what Snapchat are doing is literally beautifying you. So I'm like looking at this picture and I'm like, wait, am I really
Mm.
that hot? But
Yeah.
what that does though is you see a lot where now some people won't even take an image of themselves without that
Mm.
level of filter
Yeah.
because to them it enhances how they look. And
Mm.
so you start living a lie almost because you can't compete with the computer.
Yeah. And I think the filter concept and the whole let's show a life that I'm not living, what it actually does is leaves the individual empty. And I believe that the level of self love in terms of the journey really, you know, it's kind of spurred on when you're in that valley. And I think it's India Ari, when you're in the valley, that's when you can see both sides more clearly. So if you're doing all this filter stuff, and then, you know, when you get the shame when the camera's faced the other way, bam, that's actually what you look like, you know?
Mm,
And then it kind of just peels all that. That's just a small example, but you realize that you're not really real. And then you've got to pick up maybe that's not really how my personal journey where I'm at now started, but interacting with other people, etc., and just through observation, you maybe have a moment, generally speaking, where you realize how disconnected you are.
mm.
You know, you're not, like you said, you're not even taking pictures without the filter anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy. But I just wanna, you just said that's not how your journey started.
Mm,
So I always find it interesting, this idea of self-love journey. So but I'll get into that in a minute. But
mm.
what is it for you that one day you woke up and thought, I need to go on this self-love journey, so to say?
It wasn't that conscious. I didn't have the, you know, the vocabulary to be like, this is self-love, this is what I'm doing. I find it interesting when I look at my own because there was a point when I tried to go down this road where what I'm on now, and it wasn't authentic in the sense of, for me, I had to, quote unquote, know who I was and love myself to keep hold of another person. So therefore, at the root of that is not self-love. So I was reading these books because I didn't want to be insecure because the insecurity wasn't working in that dynamic. So then I was like, okay, well, I've got to love myself to keep this person. That's literally how mine started. But it wasn't the real deal. That was the first part of the journey. And then, you know, as that relationship with that person, you know, wasn't in my life anymore, then I started to do the real work, if that makes
So
sense.
you feel, so your relationship hit a point where
Mm,
it was already degrading, and so in that point you're like, maybe there's something wrong with me. So you
mm.
start, is that what you're saying?
No, because, okay, the concept of insecurity, sometimes it's it's not actually present, but let's say it's projected as something that you are about. So then what's at the root of insecurity? You know, lack of self-love, lack of self-esteem. But then that was the catalyst. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah.
So then I would read the books and I would do this because I'm like, well, because I'm being insecure, and it's not fruitful for this connection now, it's causing a problem, I'm going to look at my insecurity. Why am I insecure? And then you pick up certain books, and then it starts from there. I'm not saying it wasn't part of the journey, because the journey is continuous. There's not really a real, you can't put a line under different sections of your life like it's, a best-selling book. It doesn't work like that. It's real life. But that's something that's stood out. And I remember being like, when I actually got into the different phase, like that other stuff that I was doing before, that work that I thought I was doing, just preparation for this bit now.
So before we get into this bit now,
Mm-hmm.
just want to because relationships, like so let's double back a second. So how we view ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, it's very difficult to detach that from outside validation. So what a lot of people find is within relationships, they have a level of validation.
Yep.
And then it's kind of difficult to exist without that. So, but you saying in your relationship, you discovered you were insecure. So is that to say your partner at the time wasn't feeding you in terms of the things he said to you, the way he treated you, or was that what the dynamic? Or
no? And that's what shows you that it's you.
Yeah.
No matter what another person can say or do, if that bond with self is weak, then it's weak. I've been on the other end of that, when I've poured so much motivation, support, encouragement, love into a person, but because they are not there, they do not. It's cliche, but how can somebody love you if you do not love yourself? How can you receive that love if you're not even there? People can only meet you where you have met yourself. Like, it works that way as well. There's a lot we could explore with that, to be honest.
Yeah. And so you come out of this relationship and you say that's when the real work started. So what was the real work, or what is the real work?
You touched on it before, that validation. I'm very much now into connection rather than attachment. So when you have relationships that are centered on attachment, then of course, that I'm not saying I'm at zero and no one doesn't need to validate me in any way, shape or form, because then I'll be a robot. I'm real, you know what I mean? But it's like, when I came out of that, my story is when I came out of that, the real work started, because solitude is my thing. It is my tool of self-care, because when I'm in that solitude, I cannot run to anyone for this validation. I cannot, there's different levels of all this validation, okay? But I don't need a cosign on so much stuff. It's not always been easy. It's not like, I came out of that and all of a sudden I validate myself internally. But I'm very much now an intrinsically motivated person. I do what I need to do because it feels good to me. It feels right. So intuition is really important, that internal voice, knowing what's right, what's wrong for you. It's been a process over years, of course, to reach this point, to do some of the things that, I do, outwardly for others in the community and within myself. So it's not overnight.
Yeah. So like you said, at the end of the day, we're only human. So the outside world will still have an influence. But how can you get to that point where you're, let's say, 80% there, where you're 80% self-validating? What did you do to get to that point?
Okay. It's ugly. It's not pretty. You're going to cry. You're going to be confused. But you are going to have to dig deep inside of yourself and be like, okay, I need to be self-full, fill myself with me, okay? What is me? What's at the foundation? Because if certain parts of myself are there, but they're not being, utilized or stimulated, or you have to just do that, whether that's, research into self through trying out new things, putting yourself out of your comfort zone, engaging with new people, going to different places, whatever it is for you. So for me, the spoken word did it, because, people do journaling, they do meditation, and some people might argue that those things are part of that also. But going within you in the way that works for you, you have to go with it, because you can read all the books you want, etc. But are you actually going to actualize the new theories that you've read about? Because self-love, a lot of people are theorizing it and they're not living it. that's where I'm at now with some of my thinking. So even for me, 2019 is like, okay, we're stepping the game up and we are putting these things that we can talk about all day into practice, you know? So touching on relationships and validation, how do you really know if you've done that work and learnt that lesson until you engage with people in the same way that you may have before? Or else, what is it? It's just a theory.
So within your self-love journey, have you had moments where you veer away? So, you're like, you hit a point where I'm like, okay, um, I don't rely on validation from others. I'm feeling good about my life, where my life is going. Like, do you have moments where you kind of just veer left from self-love?
So in a sense that my new real, because I think it's a continuous thing, you always getting these new, downloads, as I call it, of information. So validation cannot really be completely healed at all until you put yourself in contact to the sources, the types of, things that were validating you, whether it's, other people, material, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, you have to, be involved with that. So definitely like walking into, my thing is relationships. They teach, love is a teacher, in my opinion. Been so many life-changing and, engagement that has really come from relationships. This self-love thing is, people put it across, it's you. It is you. You have to do the work. You have to do the realization. You have to do the processing, the actualization. But you cannot do the test in a way alone, if that makes sense. So definitely the choices that I have made and when things naturally maybe would have fallen away, if you are still clinging to a validation, you're not going to let them things go. For example, letting go to me is a revealer. How easily, in terms of connection, attachment, those two things I was talking about before, are you operating from your lower self? Are you working with attachment or your higher self, which for me would be, connection?
I just want to go back a little bit because you're talking about the process being never ending. And I was finding the whole idea of self-love journey interesting because it's not really a journey, is it? Because you don't arrive at self-love. You're not suddenly, I'm at self-love. Wow. It's a process. I guess it's part of growing and learning. The more you grow, the more you learn. You're always going to find new challenges, new experiences, new relationships, etc. that are always going to kind of influence your state in terms of self-love. So I want to move on so you said you've just come back to the UK from Australia.
Yeah.
So how long were you were you living in Australia or?
At first I refused to take that, that label, but I said when I bought, I'm allowed to say a product.
Of course.
When I bought my NutriBullet, I'm like, okay, I live here. Like that was levels. I live here because I've got a NutriBullet. But I was earning money there, socialising there, doing my living there. So yeah, but that was nearly a year. I think it's about 10 months that I spent there, or 9 months. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not one of them people with dates, you know what I mean? Dates and time frames, and because a lot happens in life and that's just not my focus. But yeah, the travelling was in total, I think it was 19 months that I've maybe done.
Oh, so Australia wasn't the destination. It's just you were kind of stopping in different places.
Yeah.
So you could find there's two types of travelers, right? I've always wanted to travel the world. And they tend to kind of travel at 19, 20 kind of thing, right? And then there's the I'm running away from life travelers. Which category do you kind of fall into in that sense?
Wow. Okay. A lot of reflection has to reveal this. So at the time, I don't think I was as consciously aware of some of my motivations. It's a combination. So life positioned it so that things, like remove themselves. So I had stability at one point. all the things that, for our age group and everything, this is success. You got this, you got that, you got your good job, you got, you got your place, you got a relationship, blah, blah, blah. It's not like I wasn't traveling, I was going on holidays. And then when these things, one by one, because let's say one would go, and I'm like, cool, I don't need to make a move because I still got X, Y, and Z. Next one falls away, next one. And then the last thing that seemed like it would not go anywhere, which was even where I was living, like it went up for sale and I was like, okay, time to make a move. So then the circumstances surrounding it practically just seemed like it was an okay thing to do. But in order for me to actually go on the journey, I had to set myself back up again, but only with a temporary mindset, knowing that this is not forever. I have to make a move, a big move. You know what I mean? So, and that's what I like to stress to people, because when I have conversations, because I literally have traveled the world, I've gone from one side to the other, and in a way it's not even finished, but I have to cross that. And people say to me, well, how could you do that? I couldn't do that. I've got a man, I've got this, I've got that. But that's self-love in itself, because if you have something within you, a desire, then who are you? Because I believe that desires are not just random. They're given to us. They're connected in my belief system to the divine. So if I have a desire, I can't just be like, snip that out, forget that. Because it's not going to remove itself. It will come back to you. So you need to deal with it, in the way that you can, when you can. So, I had all that stability again, set up, and I could have just carried on in that stability, but I had to follow that. Does that answer your question?
So life kind of happened, and conveniently it was like, okay, I have no attachments right now, so I can go traveling. But in reality, on reflection, you're like, there are things you were escaping, so to say.
Yeah, I can touch upon that. Like, if you really, okay, I guess you do want me to go there.
If you're willing, yeah.
No, that's fine. So, yeah, because I think my thing now is owning parts of my story so that they do not, grip me in any way. So I would say that at a certain point, as I said, it was only reflection that revealed it, because I wouldn't go around saying this at the point, because that wasn't my truth. I didn't connect with the truth. But yeah, I'm going around the houses now. So
That's
basically,
fine.
in terms of relationships, right? This is going to make me sound so cray, but okay. So if I am not still and fixed in one place, what I'm living that whole, I'd rather catch flights than feelings. You know what I mean? So that solitude that I spoke about before, as I said, it's prevention for me, because at that moment I didn't have all of this grounding that I have within myself. I was vulnerable out here, like, you know what I mean? I had to do that. So that's the thing about coping mechanisms, okay? So they serve a purpose at a time. They don't need to go everywhere you go. And at the moment for me, I'm kind of stripping back with a lot of the things that I've been carrying around for a lifetime as survival, But if you're no longer in those circumstances, then those things become redundant. So at that point, when I booked that round the world trip, it was what I needed to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll own it.
So in terms of traveling, the greatest cliche ever is essentially you learn so much about life through traveling, cultures, just and also yourself. So kind of what lessons have you taken, or were there any kind of situations or experiences that kind of taught you things during your journey?
So many. I'm going to go the recent ones. So in Australia, I have made amazing connections with beautiful people, which taught me, for example, because self-love is a lot about independence and not looking outward. But then there is that balance of when it is time on your journey as an individual to ask for help, to take help, then if you don't act on that fact that it is that time, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and everything about self-love is giving yourself the best. Okay, so shout out to those people, but that's taught me that sometimes you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable to other people in that sense. You can lean on other people. It doesn't mean that you don't love yourself. So when you go on this self-love, in a way, some of it's not even accurate. You're thinking that you carry around about your self-love. So yeah, that's one thing. Other things are identity, who you are. Traveling around the world in different environments to different people, you're one thing. Even the terminology placed upon you as a person, it can differ in different environments. So then what happens is, for me, is you're not going to allow anyone else to define you any longer because it's not stable. The only thing that's stable is how you hold yourself. So I talk about these concepts of being home within yourself, because no matter where you place me as a person, I have to have certain things because external can't knock me off anymore. And I'm in my head now, I'm like, what can bother me? I've traveled the world. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. You know, I've told you about the South Africa thing, and
Actually haven't told me about the South
oh
Africa
yeah,
thing.
this is good. Yeah, I just say it so
okay.
easily now.
Is it something you can talk about?
Oh
Or?
yeah,
Okay.
now I can, and
Yeah.
this is what I say to people: don't confuse the fact that it's easy for me to say it now without getting emotional. That, you know, it wasn't a thing, because it was a thing. You know, it threw me off who I was, and so long story short, I was hijacked at gunpoint. You know, even the trainers off my feet were taken. I was punched in the face. I had a strange man on top of me, searching me, all of that, you know, with rope in his hand. So I thought I was going to die. And, you know, all these other things that was going through my head. I'm a positive person, but that positivity was nowhere to be found in the back of that minivan that I was in. I was traveling from Swaziland to South Africa. And yeah, the self-love part comes into it aftermath. So after I went through something like that, okay, I couldn't even leave my room like for a day or so. And then the building that I was staying in, there was a comedy show in the same building. So me and my friend who I was with, we decided, okay, we're going to have to go outside. We need to eat some food outside. Let's go. So we go to this comedy show as well. And I'm a person who, you know, I've got a certain level of ability to speak and be present. You know, I do performance poetry. So I'm normally on a stage. I'm normally comfortable to share who I am on a stage. I am telling you that at that moment, I was uncomfortable sitting in a crowd. You understand the things that was going through my head? And then I had to leave early. Like, imagine. So when I've left, I was just broken because I'm like, hold on a minute. You took my trainers, I can deal with that. But now you've took who I am. You've taken my confidence. You've taken my ability to own my space and use my voice. Because right about now, I'm thinking, how am I going to do my thing again when I can't even sit in an audience? I've lost me. So then the realization was, lost me. But I thought you didn't have yourself. I thought you didn't know yourself. I thought you were on this journey. It's not that I didn't know myself. It's because you spoke about it before, I hadn't accepted myself. I hadn't claimed the fact that I am someone who can take a stage, that I am someone who can perform. I am someone that can share, and I am someone that has confidence. I hadn't taken ownership of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of just changed up my thinking.
So like an experience like that, that's interesting because like just hearing it in short, I can kind of extrapolate the details.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a traumatic event like that, it's interesting that you were able to psychologically turn it around so quick. Well, I'm saying so quickly. I don't know the time frame, but
days, like 2 days. Like
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So that is rapid because anxiety is a very understandable response to that situation.
Panic attacks. Never had them before. It was happening. Waking up out of my sleep, just making these noises that I've never even made before. Like, you know, this anguish, this shock, and it was just pouring out over like a 2-day period. But when that happened, I was like, okay, this is just here to teach me. So let it teach me. I'm out of it. I'm not dead. I'm not no longer in any physical danger. So allow it to teach me.
That's also interesting because the other side of that coin as well is, were you and your friend traveling, just the two of you?
Yeah.
So you're outside of your support system. You're, I mean, I'm guessing you and your friend have a very close bond, but in some ways you are a little bit isolated. Yet you turned it around to something so positive so quickly. Like I'm generally a positive person, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have turned that around as quickly as you did. So what is it that you think? Why is it you think you were able to do that, or to just really shift your mindset, or
Because even at that point, I wasn't even heavily into affirmations, meditation, yoga, all of that stuff. It wasn't even really, no, I hadn't even touched on some of it because I hadn't got to Asia yet, which is where I kind of started some of those practices. I think it's just I'm in tune. I've not got this veil over myself, which I had like years ago of just going with the motions, living life. I don't want to use this term, but this woke business. Okay, be woke to what's happening, but be woke to what is happening inside of yourself, because there is no use in knowing about all these community things that have happened in the past if you do not have a grip on your own reality, because you can positively affect others if you have taken ownership on the journey within the bigger journey. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure I
wow.
can articulate it, but
No, that's amazing. Well, we're thankful that you're okay for one. Because I've heard about incidents in Africa, they go south, and
mm,
so, and you lost your shoes. Oh, you got some new shoes, I can see.
yeah,
You lost your shoes, but you found yourself.
yeah, for
That's
real.
that's poetry.
Reminded who I am, I would say, yeah.
All right, so I'm so fascinated about your travels, like, and the lessons you've learned. It's got me thinking about, because I've known you a long time, so I'm not sure if this is something I can touch on, but obviously when we were young,
Mm-hmm.
there was a slight aesthetic difference
Mm.
to how you look now, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
mm, not to put words in your mouth, I'm going to let
Mm-hmm.
you tell
Yeah.
the story yourself, but essentially, you had an insecurity
Yeah.
and you found a way to resolve it. So, I really want to
So it seems.
explore this, because I want to understand if the procedure you undertook,
mm.
did you come out the other side with the results you were expecting?
Okay.
But essentially, I don't know if you want to just talk about
Yeah.
the process, or what Eastern security was, and what
Yeah. I can go there. So I think we've known each other for about 20 years. Yeah.
yeah, more or
Yeah.
less.
Big 20 years. So before I even knew you, the process started, the conversation surrounding, this surgery, which is basically, I can explain that it was upper and lower jaw surgery because I didn't have like a bite at the front. So if I was going to eat an apple, I couldn't really bite into the apple initially. You know how you just crunch into the apple? Couldn't happen because the bite and everything was happening at the back of my mouth, because that's where the teeth were able to connect in one way. Didn't affect me being able to speak, breathe, talk, obviously not. So clearly aesthetic, but at a very young age, it was given to me as a decision. Do you want to go down that road? I didn't have enough self-love to say no.
Also, you're how old at this point?
I was thinking about this the other day. I have no idea. Again, I'm one of them people, I'm just a little bit ridiculous with timelines,
So
but
let's say hypothetically around 8,
yeah,
maybe. Okay,
when it was seeming like it was growing in a certain way.
so the decision, someone gave you this option. Was it a doctor that gave you specifically that option, or?
I feel like it was me. There was a time where, okay, we're going to wait to see how your bones develop. So it wasn't as young as that. It's probably like maybe within that 2 years time frame, it was like, okay, this is how it works. The whole thing was about 10 years from the beginning, from that point of realization. So too young, in my opinion. And I've questioned myself, if I have a child, because it's hereditary, by the way. So my dad had it. My dad's got a few children, but I'm the one who has it. So it doesn't mean, you will or you won't get it. But I've questioned it. I'm like, okay, so if it's my child, what am I going to do? It's crossed my mind. So I would hope that the way, the dynamic is within my household, that child has more self-love, self-esteem than what I did, you know? So it's not a regret. It's just that also the mental health side of things wasn't there. There was no explanation, because now when people are going to do gastric bands and things like that, they have psychological review, right? There's not that. Why not? It's a physical thing. It's a physical. Maybe they do that because those things can be negatively affected if you go back to your old behavior. But I still think that it's important. Mental health is in everything. At the end of the day, a young girl who'd not even been bullied extremely, just one or two comments, I would say, to me, it's not extreme when I reflect. But if that insecurity, strong enough, then you're going to make that decision.
But I guess, to me, the thing I'm trying to get my head around is just because you're 7, 8, 9 or whatever age, you're still going to have insecurities. You're still going to have... Because, I mean, we think of childhood as this playful, gleeful thing, and we forget that... Well, I say we, but I mean, to me, it's a reminder. You just reminded me that you can have these really strong insecurities to the point that you really want to change. So... So what was your mom's or your dad's or your parents' stance on that?
I think, I mean, we could get really deep, but I really feel like at the time, people were dealing with their own stuff to not necessarily give it that much thought, to even think, why is my child so invested in wanting to change her face? Like, I can only speak, this is not no disrespect, it's all love, but I can only speak from what I would hope to do if I was in that position, and I'm not. So far, I'm not a mother, or a father, I'm not a caregiver in that sense, but I just feel like that's part of the job. You have your daddy cup and your mummy cup, and you need to have, those need to be filled. So, people were busy filling their own cups. That's the only way I can say it in a diplomatic way. People were going through real life, and that wasn't a focus of, okay, Buki doesn't like her face and she actually wants to get this surgery. Let's try and build her self-esteem up to make her feel good about herself. And then she can maybe look at that in the future. Because that's, how I would like to approach that if I was a parent. But no regrets. I have no regrets about the surgery. I just wonder sometimes if it was now, would I do it? Probably not. Because,
So you start this process 8, 9. I think I remember around when we would have met, actually a couple of years. I don't think it was mentioned immediately, but maybe a year in. So then they had to start working on your jaw, or what was the process exactly?
Like, teeth had to be removed. Good teeth, that had nothing wrong with them, but to make way for the, I suppose the way things were going to fit together, good teeth had to go, a few different times. Wearing braces for a very long time, and that the main thing was the waiting, because your teeth have to be in a certain position so that it's set up correctly for the operation. And when I realized how much attachment I had, going back to attachment to, the way my face looks and what people think about me, or what I thought people think about me. Because I'll be honest with you, I was in a relationship at that point, and that person was straight up like, well, I don't really see why you need to do it. I met you in that, with that, I don't get it. And I guess even for them, it was like they questioned how good, their role of helping me with how I feel about myself and all those kind of things. But these things, as I said, they're internal. So no one can't fix that for you. Even doing the operation didn't fix it. And that's when I realized there was 2 major points. The day before I was due to have it, the operation got cancelled. And I was broken for a minute. I was like, even though, we'll come back to you and give you another day, I'd attached so much to it, and so much emotion and importance was placed on it. That's when I knew that it was a big deal to me mentally.
So that's interesting, because we always think the grass is greener. Like, it's kind of it's an unavoidable thing. If for me, my thing is height, right? I remember in college I had this girl, like, she was 5'3". So I'm taller than that. And she's, you're just too short for me.
Oh God.
And no, but those little things get into your head. So my thing's my height. And you wonder, oh, if only I was like this, then maybe this results would happen. But
Mm,
obviously, there's not much I can do about my height. I'm calm with it. It's calm, whatever. But
mm,
for you to have so much weight on this, okay, I'm change my face. I'm gonna love me, like, and
yeah.
then to get to that point.
Mm.
So, okay, so let's say I don't know what the recovery process is, something like that. But say, so what age did you have the operation?
I was at uni and I did it in the summer. So I could have been like 19, 20.
So wait, this
Like
process took 10 years to.
literally, yeah.
So so there's a initial consultation. They start removing teeth.
hmm
Did they do anything else before the operation, or?
No, not really. You've just got to wait for the teeth to move. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of appointments and work surrounding that. But the whole time, you don't get any emotional stuff. That's what.
So okay, I'm going to assume the person you were at 9 is different to the person you were at 19,
You
right?
would assume, but not insecurity wise, right?
Um, but so at any point were you thinking, I can not do this, or were you just even at 19 so attached to this idea?
Yeah, despite the fact that I'd obviously by that age achieved things in my life that would give me self-esteem potentially, but it's external. You have to deal with that internal validation or this unworthiness, this I am not good enough, I am ugly, whatever your thing is. It is not going to move until you get internal. I can give you examples and you can read about this on my Instagram. I've spoke about the fact that when I was a teenager, I had scouts from Def Jam giving me their cards, talking about being in music videos. I still felt ugly. That is the fact. I had big MCs from London when I was a teenager trying to, speak to me. And I'm just like, it did not fix it. It
Hmm.
did not fix it. Mm-mm.
Now, so this recovery process, so it's like, I'm going to, just hypothetical, I don't know, it's 3 months, maybe something like that, or longer.
Maybe a little bit longer, not 3 to 6 months. Yeah.
Okay, so you've had the operation. I'm going to ask you two points.
Mm,
So, how did you feel a few days after? And then once you were fully recovered, 6 months later,
mm,
how did you feel then? So, initially, you've
mm,
had the operation, you built this up in your mind for 10 years that
mm.
in 10 years' time, I'm going to be so beautiful. I'm going to change my face. And so, the day after the operation,
Mm.
how did you feel?
Well, so you look like you've been run over by a number 50 bus.
Mm.
Like straight up. You're unrecognizable, to get graphic, you wake up and a stream of blood pours out of your mouth and no one told me that that was even going to happen. So there's a lot of shock. And also, I've never really been in hospital for anything else. So being in that environment, etc., not recognizing my face, because even my nose was different at that point because a part of it gets broken when they're working with the jaw. So I think it's back to pretty much normal now, but at that point it was different and it was a lot to contend with. And you're physically uncomfortable. You cannot sleep properly for a long time. You cannot eat. You're on liquids. But in terms of mentally, I was just like, okay, no one didn't tell me about this. Just not prepared. But because remember, I didn't really know what I had actually attached to it because I hadn't gone internal and looked at the root. I couldn't have said, oh, I'm really insecure. Because I guess in my head, I'm like, it's approved. It's an operation that I'm being given. So it needs to be done. Or else if it was just cosmetic, I'd be paying £10,000. It's NHS because it's necessary. Like I had disassociated the sort of the psyche that I had with the procedure. Yeah.
So, the day after, you're just unrecognizable.
Mm,
So, 6 months down the line now, you've healed.
mm.
I'm guessing, have you become accustomed to this new look at this point?
No,
So, yeah, how did you feel 6 months later then?
I think it takes a long time. Imagine looking in the mirror and it's not the same face. Well, you can't imagine. It's not
Yeah.
something you can imagine. And then have the realization of, oh, well, I'm not all of a sudden outwardly confident. It's not fixed it. Like, oh my God, it's not fixed it. What else can I do? Because that's what I thought was the thing that held me back because, you know, I probably in a way was like, I'm holding myself back. You know, I'm not confident in certain ways, but I masked it also. I did performance studies, for example, at college. So, you know, I'd get on the stage and I'd do certain things, but I was never fully in a position to take ownership of, you know, who I am and what I could and couldn't do because of insecurities. And that's unworthiness is a mofo. Like, it's just so debilitating. And that's why going back to the work that I do, because don't look at me and think that I just arrived like able to talk on a podcast. Are you crazy? The old me would have been hands over mouth, and you can probably remember that. It's like, like it is a journey, and like sometimes I can't articulate the work that I've done because it's just been so immense. I've come from so much like lack. I was not given certain things. That's just a fact. Like, and you know, disclaimer, no disrespect to anyone because people do the best that they can do, but my cups were not filled. Like that's the reality. So I've had to do that. But I wouldn't change any of it. No. I wouldn't change any of it. It means that I can do this. It means that I can do Daughter of the Sun. It means that I can write poems that can shift people's thinking and maybe they can look at themselves. Maybe they can find healing, you know? So it is what it is.
Yeah, like it's crazy because like I just said, you expect the expectation for all of us. If only X or Y, then that would lead to Z.
Yeah.
And you get it, and it's not what you expect. It's crazy, but it's an important lesson. Like you just keep saying, you have to do the work, and it's such an important lesson. And I'm hoping if anyone is actually listening and there's something they really are wanting to change about themselves, that they do take that time to look within. But it's difficult because between the ages of 9 and 19, like, do you really possess that ability to look within? Do you get what I mean? Because you basically, that's the puberty range, right? So
can I just kind of respond to a part of what you said? Because I've obviously questioned that within myself. Like, you know, maybe in a way a bit of blame, like, because if I loved myself more, then I wouldn't have done this and whatever. But recently I've met a young woman, I think she's 15 or 16. She has the jaw. She has the face. She is confident. She told me that she is not taking this operation. So it is possible. It's because it's that unworthiness. If there is, you know, quote unquote, these broken pieces that need that TLC, that need that work, then that's why you're going to make one decision and not the other, you know? Because I saw so much, you know, you have those situations, you're like, okay, this is a mirror right now, but you're showing me maybe what could have been. Even though I've always kind of been aware in my adult years that if I did have more self-esteem, etc., then it probably wouldn't have happened. But it was so refreshing to see that, you know, that was my journey. It had to be that way or else it would have been that way. You know, to see it in my face like that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So, okay, so we've discussed the day after, we discussed 6 months after. So today, how do you feel about your face or the operation? Like, how do you feel today?
It's so, and I wish that I could sit here and say, no, Chisoma, I'm completely good. You know, I absolutely love myself every day. There are good days most of the time, but there are moments. Like, let's be real. Before we started the interview, I didn't even realize it was going to be so visual, and I'm like freaking out a little bit. But I'm still here. I'm present. And I didn't say let's schedule again when I can do certain things. So many ways, I strip myself of this vanity big time. I mean, I can talk about it forever and a day in terms of the way I've chosen to wear my hair. It's the same thing, stripping yourself of vanity. So I'm always doing the work because, like I said, it can fluctuate. But what matters to me is what I'm doing most of the time, you know?
Okay, so we've covered a lot today, like some very emotional moments. Like, do you have any advice or tips on self-love that any listeners can take away?
Okay, you are going to need like radical honesty with self, first of all, because without that, you're not really you're gonna do the whole theory thing that I was speaking about earlier. You're going to live theory, and that's it. That's not really living, in my opinion. What is problematic and challenging to keep, let it fall away. Don't resist. Own your desires, whatever they are, because they're not accidental. Those are the things that I'll just come to my head, and I'll just leave it there.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Like, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being the experimental episode number 1, where we kind of figure out the kinks, and we'll see how it goes on from here. But it's been wonderful. It's gone better than I could have expected. Thank you for being so honest and open as well. I think it's so important, because that's where the opportunities to learn come from honesty. Without it, I mean, people. The beauty of the internet is it has its downfalls, pitfalls, but that when you feel isolated, to be able to see that someone has gone through what you've gone through, or what you've gone through. So yeah, thank you for your honesty. Hopefully that does help somebody, and I'm sure it will. So yeah,
That's good. Thank you for having me.
So where can the viewers and listeners find more about you?
Okay, so predominantly Instagram, me as an individual, Buki Words. Buki is Buki, Buki Words. And then Dawta of the Sun, so it's Dawta of the Sun. DAWTAOTS, Dawta of the Sun. Also we're on Facebook, and I have a Facebook like page as well for me also. So I'm about.
Perfect. So yeah, please do follow Buki. Obviously, follow BU. It's at b-u.co. And until the next episode.